Great. Well, welcome everyone. On behalf of the SMS and my colleagues, George and Sharon, who coordinate the Strategy Imagination Forum, I want to welcome you to today's event. This will fit just in line with the notion of the Strategy Imagination Forum, where it's our chance to share cutting edge thinking on current strategy issues. And with us today, we have Karen and Chris from the IBM Institute for Business Value. This is IBM's business think tank. Karen leads the Institute's research on digital operations, and Chris is a managing research consultant. I'd like to hand it over to Karen now, who I think will just give us a little bit of background on the Institute itself, and then we'll jump right into the presentation. So welcome both Karen and Chris.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I really wanted to give a little overview of the virtual enterprise, and then I think Chris will tell us a bit about the Institute for Business Value and the extent of our business think tank. Yeah. I'll speak up as loudly as I can. Does that help?
Okay, that helps. Yes.
Right, that's it. Okay, sorry for that, everyone. So the virtual enterprise, a little history on that. So we were beginning to observe through all of the plethora of extensive research and client engagements that the emerging technologies were and really are significantly changing, basically the landscape for digital transformation, of course, in the marketplace with platforms, changing experiences with customers, with workforce experiences, partnership experiences, and really the shift to automation and AI-driven, artificial intelligence-driven workflows and processes. So this kind of started to accelerate in a big way during the last several years of the pandemic. And it's really accelerated these shifts I was just talking about. So now, and very quickly, we are in the midst of new realities. We've evolved, as we are doing right this moment, to virtual work environments. We've evolved to global communications, like crazy, especially among supply chains and all the ecosystems. So all this is a necessity. So Mark Foster, our IBM consulting chairman, and John Granger, our CEO, anticipated kind of a vision for this really before all of this happened to the world in the last several years. And they called it the virtual enterprise, which has now become reality. So we really look forward to sharing it with you today. It's both a strategy and an operational execution blueprint. With that, Chris, do you want to take us through a little bit about the IBV?
Sure. Thanks, Karen. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the IBV, we are IBM's thought leadership arm. And as you can see here on this slide, we have people all over the world. We really are a global team. We might not have someone in your specific country, but I'm sure we have someone who is at least in your time zone. So if you're ever working on anything and you think, hey, the IBV could be really useful or helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out. As you can see here, we cover a broad range of industries from automotive to telco and travel and transportation, business domains, technologies, and emerging topics. So no matter what kind of research you're involved with or what kind of field that you work in, I'm sure that we have something that's going to be relevant to you. And you can find all of our content online at ibm.com/IBV. So please, go check out the website. And if we can ever help you, don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, if we go to the next slide, Karen, why don't you give us just sort of, you gave us an intro about how we ended up developing this virtual enterprise framework, this, strategic model. Can you sort of just unpack at a high level what it really consists of?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. So really there are 6 building blocks, as you can see here, to the virtual enterprise. And as I said earlier, they're both, this forms a strategy for companies, organizations, enterprises to develop and enhance their digital transformation journey. It also has all of the operational elements, as you will learn today as we go through this. So I'm very excited to share with you today. Please look at the circle, if you will, because that's very important. At the top, number 1 is market-making platforms and ecosystems. And Chris will be taking us through that in just a moment. Next is science and data-led innovation, really big. And then in the middle is extended intelligent workflows, because you'll learn that this is the thread that pulls all of this together. Next is sustainability, really, really a big topical area across the board, members in organizations and other entities, and the impact that's having on all of us. Then inclusive human technology partnerships, and wrapping around in that golden dotted, if you will, circle of open, secure, hybrid cloud networks. The imagery here is very, very important, because we purposely have portrayed this in a circle because these are all interconnected and they are all extremely integrated. So as we go through each one, continue to think in your mind that these are not standalone areas. They're building blocks that all come together to create kind of a strategic roadmap, or basic blueprint is the title that we have for our book that goes through all this. We will be providing you links to that today in the chat room. So blueprint for digital transformation. Okay, Chris. Over.
All right, and if we can jump, okay. So I'll introduce the first building block of the virtual enterprise, which is market-making platforms and ecosystems. And I have seen in the chat there, Karen, it sounds like the audio still isn't coming across great. So maybe in the next couple of minutes while I go through this first building block, we might be able to do some kind of audio check or adjustment there. But let's go to the next slide. So the biggest, yeah, there we go. So the biggest strategic idea in the virtual enterprise framework is the concept of open ecosystem connectivity coupled with innovation. And if you think about it, even the leading organization in a given sector is going to find another organization that does at least one thing better than them. So whereas other players within your sector might traditionally be viewed as competitors, the days of being able to operate independently and within a silo, those are really gone. And the reality is that most every organization has data, insights, or some advantage that can help other organizations. And those organizations also have data and insights that offer value in return. And the leading organizations, right, they see this kind of engagement as a win-win, because when they can help other businesses enhance value, they find new opportunities themselves in so doing. And we posit that open platforms and ecosystems offer new avenues for growth, efficiency, and again, innovation because of this potential trade-off. And when we think about this, we want to focus on partnerships that, we're talking about fewer ecosystem combinations, but combinations that really, are the right combinations, the combinations that stand to add the most value and the most differentiation. And the main hurdle to overcome with this type of engagement really comes down to the cultural and strategic mindset at the executive level. So being able to create that buy-in and that understanding that, hey, we might be meeting with this company that for the last 20, 30 years has been our biggest competitor, right? They're still your competitor, but you both have this healthy ability to give and take from one another to improve each other's organizations. And by doing that, increasing the health or improving the health of your ecosystem, which ultimately comes back to you. And I'll share an IBM client case example with you in a moment that shows this in action. And of course, we're IBM, so we're going to talk about technology just a little bit. We don't plan to overwhelm you with anything too technical, but this type of connectivity is going to necessitate the right technology to enable the correct information to go in and out of the organization and to mitigate threats while that's happening. So we view open hybrid cloud as being really key here, because that can ensure that the data is secure, available, and scalable as it's being shared throughout the ecosystem. So if we go to the next slide, so the takeaway from this slide is that open connectivity drives growth and value. And the way to interpret this chart is that the blue line shows organizations' average investment in technology platforms as a percentage of their total revenue or budget. And executives have told us they plan to invest about 6% of their revenue in these platforms next year, which is double their investment only 5 years ago in 2017. And then the yellow line shows the return on those investments, with the 2023 ROI projected at 50%, which is an astounding figure for any investment on its own, but it's even more astounding given that only 2 years ago, they reported an ROI of 17%. So, right, what gives, what's changed? And the only real difference is that organizations are coming to realize the power of open platforms and ecosystems. And what we're seeing is that these platforms, which have really proliferated over the last couple of years, are beginning to mature. And as these platforms mature, the returns become outsized and value creation, value capture really accelerates. And can we go to the next slide? So these findings, right, they really encourage organizations to embrace openness. And at its maximal point, we see the powerful potential for ecosystems of ecosystems to emerge, in which different industries are becoming closely connected, and partnerships that may previously have been seen as unconventional or would never have been considered can really come to the fore to add value. And then on the next slide, I'll jump to our first case study. So here we're going to talk about the State Bank of India, or SBI. And SBI has been around for a couple centuries. They're super well established in India's banking system. But over the course of the past several years, or in recent years, they were very aware that they were beginning to lose market share. And SBI viewed this younger, digital-first, digital-centric demographic as an opportunity to revamp its client base and reassert itself at the top of the market. So they digitized their offerings and created a platform called YONO, which stands for You Only Need One. And the idea was to essentially create a one-stop shop centered around, the financial experience. So this YONO platform is a digital bank, a financial superstore with investment offerings and other financial services, as well as an online marketplace with lifestyle products. And when you think about a bank, right, you don't normally think of lifestyle products. Like, what does that have to do with my checking and savings account or with paying my bills? And they saw this, untapped connection point, and they really went for it. And they couldn't do that alone, however. So they partnered with over 100 e-commerce sellers to really bring this platform to life and attract that target demographic. And this initiative was really key to an overall digital transformation at SBI. And then we have results on all of our case study slides. You can see here, the platform sees over 10 million daily logins, and it's continuing to grow. In their 2020 annual report, SBI mentioned YONO 96 times, which, that's a ton of mentions, and it shows how core this platform has become to their strategy. And they're doubling down on it, right? So they're adding about 15 new use cases or customer journeys per month to YONO, and they're just continuing to capture more value on this platform. And then, pretty big number here, through the platform, they've sold more than 400,000 life insurance policies and counting. And again, right, so the life insurance policies, that makes sense. We're working with a bank. It's a financial product. But to attract these players, these potential customers to the platform, they partnered with non-conventional players that might have been outside of their ecosystem, right? We're talking about lifestyle products, and it's just attracted people there. And while they're there, they're saying, okay, yeah, I could benefit from a digital bank. I could benefit from these financial services. So this is a really strong example of ecosystem connectivity and platforms at play. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Karen, and she'll take us through the next building block of the virtual enterprise.
Thank you, Chris. So I love this visual for us, the spark of science and data-led innovation, building block number 2. Let's go to the next, thank you. So this is really all about applying the scientific method. Think about how long the scientific methods of hypothesis and control groups and testing and so forth and so on, and the math behind all of that has been around. But now with all the data that's available to us in every regard, we just mentioned at the platform level, Chris did, and within the end-to-end workflows of work across enterprises and these ecosystems, with an open and kind of a collaborative type of environment with these broader groups and players, if you will, in these systems. So we refer to this in the virtual enterprise as science and data-led innovation, because the combination of the massive amounts of data available to us and the application of scientific method to that really helps us in innovating everything that we do. So we call it looking outward beyond the enterprise, if you will, or the organization, but also looking forward, looking always towards the future. And the future could be tomorrow and years beyond, but always looking for how can we apply scientific discovery to seek better innovation in everything that we do into the future. So I'll give you some examples, because this is sounding a little theoretical, but probably not to a lot of us, because we like to think this way. So data science, again, combined with digital advanced technologies, AI, machine learning, process mining, quantum computing, all of those types of things really can accelerate innovation and accelerate value. But as an organization deploys these models of collaboration and discovery, you can see here that they can scale and impact beyond their institution or enterprise. They have extreme open opportunities, open innovation with partners, with the communities, and those ecosystems of ecosystems. I found this very interesting. We asked which workflows are most likely to be integrated and enabled, if you will, by the most advanced computing power really ever discovered thus far, and that's quantum computing. Look at this, global trade management makes a lot of sense. All the parties involved in global trade management, it tops the list. Personalized and custom, if you will, experiences to our customers. Smart manufacturing, a lot of people speak of this as Industry 4.0, dear to my heart. The primary workflow of lead to cash. There's not anyone that doesn't have to deal with lead to cash, no matter what type of industry you're in or business you're in. And then digital brand management. So that's pretty interesting too, to be thinking about. This is the advancements in quantum computing in the next several years. If we go to the next slide then, thank you. This is very interesting too, sort of like the one Chris was showing with the ROI. The plethora of data that I just mentioned really accelerates opportunities. The opportunities for innovation I just mentioned, but for insight-led, really experimentation. That's what scientific method's all about, right? Experiment something, test it, works well, go. We call it scaling, right? Scale it. So insight-led experimentation and lots of innovation. So we can see here on the chart, this is over the course of the last 5 years into next year, the extreme growth in these key areas of any organization. Workforce engagement, look how it's accelerating as we move forward into next year. Ecosystem engagement, the innovation we're talking about, and customer engagement. So all of this is data-led experimentation, science applications applied to that to increase innovation and better our engagement with workforce, ecosystem partners, and our customers. On the next slide, I'd like to take you through a really, really stellar case study, ExxonMobil. We call them our client success stories because that's what they are. So a quick fact, more than 500,000 ships carry more than 200,000 containers, which are in some level of transit, each and every day. Unfortunately, with what's been going on with the supply chain bottlenecks in the past several years, including today, we're having a lot of these that are sitting in ports awaiting personnel, skill, talent, and availability, awaiting truck and other transit availability. So it's been quite an interesting dilemma. But we have an awful lot of smart chief supply chain officers and other executives around the globe who are working on this daily. But it's an opportunity to optimize really the magnitude as it traverses from our current to the future state for global trade and kind of reduce some of these issues. So excuse me, I think the screen just left. There we go. So what ExxonMobil was able to do was to really partner with us to look at quantum computing I just mentioned, and to apply algorithms to this massive, massive problem of global trade and how to optimize that. And again, to apply the scientific discovery methods to sort of try to tackle this important, trade and global supply chain problem. And because it's not going away, right? We're going to just have more goods shipped. It's just the volumes just increase as our population increases, but also as the number of goods and availability we have. I'd like to go now to the next area, the next building block. Building block number 3. This is the extended intelligent workflows. So when we speak about intelligent workflows, we like to use the analogy of the golden thread, because I said in the beginning, workflows is everything that happens to us. And these can be human workflows, they could be machine workflows, they could be machines speaking to other machines, but it's really interconnecting everything that we do. And what's really important here, and I think you're noticing this is a theme here in our conversation of the virtual enterprise, the word extended here. So we've got intelligence across workflows, but extended. Well, what do we mean about extended? Extended is exactly outside of the organization, outside of a particular work function. We've all talked over time about functional silos. Well, functional silos hopefully went away, in my thinking, decades and decades ago. But as we look to intelligent workflows, they're extended into those ecosystems. They're extended beyond the organization with partners and customers and so forth. So they provide this connectivity across these communities and across these global transactions, if you will. They provide knowledge, they provide those data-led insights we were just speaking about. But more importantly, they provide advanced decision-making, which leads to action. So if you're told in real time what's going on, and I just use my global trade that we just talked about with Exxon, if you know the path and the transparency, the visibility with trusted data of everything that's happening along that chain, can you imagine the actions that you can now take? So it also brings a lot of collaboration as all the players are interacting with the same data and the same insights. Thank you. So let's look at our first major insight here. It's the fact that virtualization, this ability to, as I just said, to have information flowing, it really provides an opportunity to really enhance our workflow efficiencies more than we've ever even, last year or the year before, more than we really ever have. And it's really transforming organizations in a very big way. So again, the extended workflows is the golden thread. Here's a visual to help us think through that. It really offers up the capability to integrate all of the emerging technologies to apply, we call it extreme automation and interconnectivity really to everything that we do. And I often refer to this as the human-machine partnership. We're working together in partnership, the various technologies. Sometimes the technologies work on their own and do whatever they need to do, be it a robotic arm in a factory, telling another device like a temperature control device to go, provide more water or change the temperature in the factory, whatever it may be. We're pretty familiar with that. That's been around for a while, but it's getting where we're running whole cities and whole agricultural environments on this human-machine partnership. Really important. On the next slide, here's some really important data. I'm just going to give you a briefing, but when you have a chance to download the deck in general, I hope that you'll spend some time going through this plethora of information. But so our study revealed that C-suite executives, they're really investing and planning for several things that relate to applying exponential technologies to these integrated golden thread intelligent workflows. So they're embedding the technologies across workflows, of course, to optimize productivity. That's top of the list. Just the nature of what I'm talking about hopefully lends that to your thinking. But it also allows this cross-enterprise or cross-organizational integration, and with that, the increased ability for the automation, the extreme automation. So things like machine learning, the advanced algorithms, all the things that we have now, simulation models. If you're familiar, digital twins, that's really big, where you simulate what's going on in a digital sense to what's going on in the physical sense. So again, you can be more proactive in your decision-making, predictive, and so forth. So it's really transforming the way that we work. If we look at the next one, here's another great client case example. Many of us are familiar with Pandora. I think this one's really fun. They're a customized jewelry manufacturer and distributor of high-end, but their business model is very high-end jewelry products, but at the same time, very affordable products. So they have quite an audience because of that. They were growing rapidly and rapidly and rapidly. I mean, like international markets, new stores, more stores, more stores, more stores. But then this thing called the pandemic really rapidly changed their store-oriented business model. And they were starting to have shutdowns. So what'd they do? They spun around really quickly and invented, if you will, or kind of the e-commerce model. So they didn't invent that. But what they did invent for them was commerce on the cloud. And so instead of a store physical presence, or in addition to store physical presence, they now have a very robust e-commerce omni-channel environment with extended intelligent workflows at the core of it. So it was quite a strategy and quite an implementation that they did basically overnight. You can see some of the stats of how large they are. They operate in 100 countries, almost 7,000 points of sale. That's probably beyond that today. It changes every day. So really a great one of how they switched their business model, increased visibility, and connected everybody with intelligent workflows on the cloud. Okay, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. So next building block is all about sustainability and impact. And if we go to the next slide, so as you can see on the left here, right, a new focus on sustainability and environmental, social, and governance goals is emerging. And in our research at the IBV over the past year or so, we've seen consumers clearly indicating they want to buy from sustainable companies, that employees want to work at sustainable companies, and that travelers are taking sustainability into account when they go places. They're actually prioritizing environmental impact over cost, comfort, and convenience when deciding how to get from point A to point B. And then from the organizational perspective, we also see the vast majority, about 85% of executives, telling us that their organizations have sustainability strategies in place, which is great. However, only about 1/3 of executives say they've actually taken any action on those strategies yet. So in the virtual enterprise model, intent and purpose is core to the business, right? We know that customers, business partners, shareholders, they're all guided by their values. And it turns out they are remarkably effective at knowing when an organization is just talking versus when they really mean what they say and care about what they do. And in today's digital world, people seemingly have ubiquitous opportunities to engage with organizations. And if you don't pass the eye test, they'll go to someone else just as fast. And because of this, going back to my earlier remarks about ecosystem partnerships, we view virtual enterprises as partnering with organizations and engaging in ecosystems that share their values, right? And that is going to help amplify an organization's virtues to the market. And both individual organizations and whole ecosystems can really weave sustainability into value propositions, partnerships, and engagement strategies to not only encourage sustainable business, but to encourage sustainable practices to people more broadly. And this is really important to note, right? The virtual enterprise sees the remit of organizations expanding to really drive this type of impact beyond what might traditionally be considered the role or mandate of a business. And if we jump to the next slide. So the left hand of this reiterates what I just said. So let's focus on the chart. And here we looked at the extent to which organizations prioritize things like workforce safety and security, sustainability, and environmental impact. And in 2018, 43% of executives said they prioritized workforce safety and security. About 1/3 said the same for sustainability, and only 16% prioritized environmental impact. And if you fast forward to 2022, right, these numbers have drastically increased as these items have really become table stakes for businesses, right? Like you're just not going to be competitive in partnering with other organizations and attracting investment and attracting talent to come work for you if you're not doing these things. And then on the next slide, yeah, so in building this chart, we asked consumer and retail companies, to what extent are you applying your top 3 sustainability goals as part of initiatives in the following areas? So all of these numbers are quite high. And in each of these business areas, good health and mental well-being, climate action, zero hunger, and life on land are being baked into strategic initiatives. And we wanted to share this image just because it goes to exemplify how sustainability is really being intertwined into the core of businesses today. And this also shows how sustainability isn't just an overarching value of organizations, right? So it's not just like the organization is saying, yes, we champion sustainability, and we hope that all of our employees really buy into that too. No, it's about, really instilling sustainability as an actual practice at a fairly micro level in different business units. So really, this is it's once you understand the concept here, this is actually a really powerful slide, I feel like. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to have our 4th case study, and this is Plastic Bank, which is a great case on sustainability. They're based out of Vancouver, but they're trying to make a worldwide impact, and essentially, they've built ecosystems that center around recycling plastic, or the ethical recycling of plastic, in at-risk coastal areas. And the idea is that instead of throwing away plastic, people can trade their plastics in for bonuses. And then the plastic, instead of ending up in the ocean or whatever waterway, the plastic is then reintegrated into new products and its life cycle is extended, thereby reducing the need for new plastics to be created, right? And then the bonuses that are given to the people that turn in the plastic, those can be used to help fund basic necessities. So in terms of the results, the program is able to connect millions of people with a relatively straightforward income opportunity, right? It's not too complicated. You have plastic, you trade it in, and you're rewarded for doing so. Plastic Bank has also deployed a blockchain infrastructure to secure each transaction and provide data in real time, which, that's going to help continuously improve the operation. And then looking forward, Plastic Bank hopes to create a closed loop supply chain and eliminate the need for single-use plastic. So I think that's a really great example of how, you have an organization focusing on a sustainability initiative, and it's creating this broader impact to the societies in which they're engaging. And then if we go to the next slide, I'll also talk. Yeah.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you right in the middle of a
Yeah.
sentence. Just while we were talking about sustainability, I'm just quickly wanted to tell the group here that I just completed like last week some additional research and on this very topic, and it was very interesting that organizations are getting lots and lots of pressure, high levels of pressure from their board of directors, their investors, their customers and consumers, and their partners for sustainable practices, as we were just talking about, across everything that they do. So you know the term ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So this is what these organizations are needing to do. They're getting the pressures, consumers sometimes will rebrand and choose another brand because of lack of, or the different sustainable practices are those that they're moving towards. So it's not just environmental, which everyone makes a really big deal about and should, to save our planet, but it's also the social, ethical sourcing, things like that. And then the governance, the metrics, and the economics behind it all. So organizations and the leaders of organizations are really thinking heavily about this. They're getting demands from a lot of different groups that are affecting their activities. So I quickly wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure, Karen, no problem. And I'll also mention the IBV has done a ton of sustainability research of late. We actually have two pretty big studies, one of which I believe is going to publish next week, and the other around May 10th. One of those studies will examine consumer sentiment around sustainability. The other will be taking a look at CEOs specifically. So again, ibm.com/IBV if you'd like to read more about the impact of sustainability on businesses. So let's go to the next slide. And, Karen mentioned this before, right, the human technology partnerships. And so while each one of these 6 building blocks is equally as important as the next, in creating this framework, we wanted to be very explicit about the role of human talent, right? And we've talked about digital platforms, data, intelligent technologies like artificial intelligence. And Karen will also talk about cloud architecture and security in a moment. But as digitized as the virtual enterprise is, the human element isn't any less crucial. And the way that organizations engage their talent is still going to be of paramount importance. So let's go to the next slide. And of course, during the pandemic, many employees were exposed to new ways of working and were confronted with online collaboration tools that they had never had to use before, new security measures, and a lot more. And as we come out of the pandemic, plenty of people are still going to work from home exclusively. Many will be exclusively back to the office, and others are going to straddle both worlds in a hybrid model. And that can be, that can cause a lot of disjointedness. And the question arises, how do you manage all of that? And organizations are going to need to lead with empathy, first of all, understanding what their employees want, what their employees need, and balancing that with, okay, how can we drive the most productivity at the same time? And they're also going to need to extend the same sense of culture and opportunities to all employees in their workforce, no matter where they're actually located. And with that, right, location has become less important. So we're operating now in a world in which talent can be accessed on short notice and conceivably from anywhere around the world. And this has major potential for businesses in terms of finding new value and discovering new solutions. But organizational workflows need to be orchestrated such that workers find accessing the organization and availing themselves to its resources to be a straightforward task with easy to use tools, interfaces, and all the like. So if we go to the next slide, if we look at the graph on the right, we see workforce scalability and workforce training and education as being much more highly prioritized by executives compared to 4 years ago and even compared to 2 years ago. And the scalability piece goes to what I just mentioned a moment ago. But the training and education aspect is really key for organizations to be able to take advantage of technologies to drive workforce efficiency and productivity. For example, Karen mentioned extreme automation, right? So tasks once performed by people might now be performed by machines. However, with the right training, the person that used to play that role becomes even more valuable. So the machine carries out the mundane and the repetitive work that the employee used to spend time doing. But now the employee is freed up to capitalize on their expertise in that process, and they can contribute more impactfully and even more creatively in some cases. So now they're not bogged down in, just these repetitive tasks. They can actually take a step back and really think, right, and apply their knowledge as best as they can. So let's go next slide. Here, we asked executives whether they agreed with the statements on the chart. As you can see, organizations expect that customers are going to access their products and services digitally in the near future, that agile operating models will complement fluid work teams, workers will be accessed from anywhere, anytime talent pools, digitization will improve efficiency, automation will become ever-present, intelligent technologies will be embedded along integrated workflows. And the long story short is that work is changing, and it is so important that organizations take a moment right now to assess the work that people are performing today and the skills they need for tomorrow. And then if we go to our next case study, here we looked at Siemens, which is a really big name, but for those of you who don't know, they're a German-based industrial manufacturer. And they've integrated many of their processes with automation and artificial intelligence. And this includes their human resources workflow or business unit. So in this example, Siemens deployed an artificial intelligence-based virtual agent for employee HR inquiries. And they have nearly 300,000 employees. So you can imagine just how many questions their HR department was fielding every day. And they rolled out the virtual agent in phases starting 5 years ago. And it is now fielding inquiries from the entire company. And given the multitude of different HR regulations by geography, this is no small feat. As you can see, the virtual agent supports 17 languages across 38 countries. And now their employees have a faster, more responsive option to get answers to their questions, all while their HR team can focus on the particularly nuanced issues that really require a human touch. And during that process, Siemens also implemented a global human capital management cloud platform, which streamlines all HR data across those various regions and company domains to improve efficiency, data availability, and everything like that. So I'll leave you with that on human technology partnerships and hand it back to Karen to cover the last piece of the virtual enterprise.
In some ways, open, secure, hybrid cloud and networks is one of the most important because, as you saw in our earlier diagram, it circled everything. It provides that golden thread. Excuse me. Just saying how important it is, I'm also going to say that I'm going to go through this relatively quickly so that we can have some time to entertain any questions or comments that you may have. So with that, let's go to the next. And as I just said, the open, secure, hybrid cloud environment surrounds and envelops really absolutely everything. I like to think of it as the glue for these workflows, these ecosystems, everything, the human technology, interchanges, et cetera. It makes really everything that we've talked about today possible because in that environment with secure data, it's the underlying infrastructure for all of this and real-time data and so forth. So why is it, making everything possible? It provides that seamless, kind of integration that's, so imperative to every one of these strategies and the operation thereof. It binds the players together in real-time environments, and it powers really those intelligent workflows I'm so happy to speak about, because another one of my passions. And it provides extreme automation that we were mentioning with kind of that computational, the ability for the science and data-led innovation. The algorithm standing alone don't do much unless it goes from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and cross all of the interactions. So also supporting, as we talked about in sustainability, tomorrow's planet, the people and the purpose, really, all the strategies that need to come together for sustainable impact are enabled by a hybrid cloud environment. Next, let's look at some key insights here. Openness, real and sharing is extremely key for the connectivity and the integration. Look here at some stats. 82% of executives are stating the importance of open environments. When we say open, that's the sharing concepts and applying, transparency to your information. Also, 82% happen to be speaking to the integration of their apps with other systems. All of this very important, because how do you move the data and how do you move it in real time without that? And then another almost 70% leveraging hybrid cloud architectures. They know the importance. It's clear here. This is what's going on. Next, I'd like to speak to modernization. This is really, really, really important. Our clients across every industry across the globe the word is everyone's using is modernizing their applications on secure hybrid cloud environments. Why? Because of everything I just said, the integration, the connectivity, the interconnectivity. These are words, but they're very important words. And they're very important words to the virtual enterprise, as you are learning today and will take forward from today on. The leaders are doing this very, very rapidly. To the right, you can see a quick glimpse into the workflows that they are focused on. And I have some pretty interesting examples to share with you on this. First, I'd like to go to the case study and talk about Airtel. They're a very large telecom. They're aggressively modernizing their applications, their platforms, all on hybrid cloud architectures. Why? In this case, to provide, again, a telecom omni-channel fulfillment. We heard that with Pandora earlier, but now this is to the telecommunications community and all the plethora of products and services, mostly services, that need to be empowered by their automated workflows. So their modern infrastructure is really designed to support the really exponential customer and bandwidth. Think of 5G and all the things going on. The bandwidth growth over 70%. So they're really realizing great progress here. Another one that I just want to mention, I don't have a slide for this, but I want to mention because it's been very close to a lot of my work, it's Delta. Delta is modernizing every single one of their apps. And when I say every single one of their apps, it's their customer facing, us as travelers, if you will. It's their on the ground operations, their in the air operations, and all of the ecosystem partner exchanges they need to make with logistics providers and so forth. So they are in the past, I think they started about a year or two ago, and they're really looking at every single one of their apps and modernizing those for today and for the future. So it's an impressive and very large endeavor, needless to say. I'd like to just kind of make up, before we go, you can go to the next slide, which is just our a little bit of information here. I'll wrap up with just a little bit of this and then a quotable quote, if you don't mind. Our research indicates that C-suite executives are really expecting a great deal from these digital transformation and virtualization investments and these initiatives over the next 3 years. Access to products remotely from customers and citizens, agile, resilient operations and operating models, the new workforce and skills provided from the anytime, anywhere work that Chris just took us through, those talent pools, and really the efficiencies and performance impact from digitization on sustainability. I'd like to end here for some Q&A on a quote from Mark Foster. He said the virtual enterprise is the next generation of modern business models that will transform, Mark is the chairman, I should have said that again. It will basically transform the way organizations innovate and perform business with one another, as they respect commerce, governance, and our commitments to one another and our planet. I thought that was beautiful. So Miles, you want to take us through, we might just visualize the 6 building blocks that we've enjoyed speaking about today, and see if we have any questions or any comments from you on, or any areas that someone would like to explore a little bit further.
No, thank you so much, Karen and Chris, for taking us through this. We do have a couple questions teed up, so let me start with that, but also invite everybody else to please feel free to chime in with the Q&A feature. So Karen and Chris, let me make this observation and maybe you can answer it. So, really the model is the focus on the virtual enterprise. One of the things I'm really struck by and I thought was fantastic is, lots of the examples you give are not companies that we would think of as virtual per se, right? Exxon, they're moving real stuff around, right? So is Pandora, so is Siemens, so is Plastic Bank. Those, right, there's elements of their business that are ultimately very tangible, but you use some examples in this as the virtual organization. Do you want to comment on that? I find this really interesting and insightful.
Do you want me to go on this one, Chris, first?
Yeah, why don't you take a stab, Karen?
Okay, so I'm so glad you said that, because we may have said in the beginning, and this is one of my pet comments, is we hear the word virtual. And most people think, oh, virtual work, what we're doing right now, right? This is new. We didn't do this a couple of years ago, or we didn't do it to this level. So virtualization, virtual anything means this. It means working in a collaborative method, lots of people coming together. In some ways, I think it's better because we don't have to get on planes and go through a lot of activity to see one another and to work with one another. But hopefully you've learned through or joined me in this thinking from what we've talked about today is virtualization is about data telling us what to do, giving us insights that we didn't have yesterday on anything, on the physical movements that you were just talking about, Miles, going from the ocean shipping to the truck, to the port, to the container, to the this, to the that, blah, 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 product design, maybe the Pandora thinking, if we want to go there. The fact that when they started out with their product design, how do you go from R&D? These are very, very physical things. Yes, they are. But if you have virtualization, you have knowledge of what's going on. You have transparency as to what your partners are doing. Think about, I'm talking supply chain now, sorry about that. But think about the multiple tiers of suppliers. If you only know what your main suppliers may be delivering tomorrow, but you don't know about their supplier and the one before that actually made the component part, you're kind of in the dark. And this is where we've been for a very long time. But with virtualization and the data and the science-led and the extended intelligent workflows and the human partnerships and all these things, what we're saying is that it's all so interconnected. And that's where the virtuality comes from as a concept. And I hope that helps everybody. It is such a big part of physical and digital combined.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that, right? So when we talk about a virtual enterprise, we're not talking about, a company that is 100% virtual with no physical infrastructure, with no people on the ground. But what we're talking about, what Karen said, about the data and that connectivity, is that through virtualizing, certain processes, workflows, you're able to extend the presence of your organization, beyond the walls of your buildings or, outside of your normal scope. And really expand that value into the broader ecosystem. And you really can't do that without digitizing, your business to make it accessible and to be able to receive, similar value and insights from other organizations.
Yeah, no, so thank you. That's great. That really sort of helps solidify my understanding and how you're thinking of it. Let me raise a question that came up in our Q&A. And again, really focusing on this notion of openness and exchanging things. The comment was, clearly technology plays a role, and you've talked about different issues about technology and security and that. What about trust in general amongst the different participants? Is that also something that you focus on or think about, those types of things?
Trust is a very, very, very big word, and I hope I said it more than once. If I didn't, I apologize. It's all about the security of the data that's being shared, the transparency. This is where, and depending on the environment and depending on what the exchanges of information are, not only do you have to have extreme security, but you provide the information to parties as they need it, but also very secure, and the portion of the information that applies to their workflow and so forth. So I hope that helps. But where trust comes in is really, really important. And one of the major enablers of that we see across tons of industries, it may have started in banking predominantly and financial markets, because talk about trust, we better trust that wire that we just sent to buy the home that I just did last week. We need to trust every transaction that occurs in business and organizations. So the point being, with blockchain, you have the ledgers, you have that ability to put date timestamps. Think about, I love it in food and in anything to do with a food chain. Now you know exact, on pharmaceuticals, you know exactly that this product was here, it then passed to there, it went through quality control, those types of things. So that's where the trust comes in, both the security of the information being, encrypted and all of that sort of thing, but also beyond the security is that word trust, and the trust comes from providing those wrappers, is the kind of way I think about it, the wrappers of things like the dates, timestamps, the integrity, the control points, and that kind of thing. How many people touched a particular piece of information?
Yeah, and to add on and go back to a more conceptual level in this framework here, so most of these building blocks promote trust, right? So market making platforms and ecosystems, that definitely depends on a lot of trust. It also promotes it, right? When you're exchanging value with other organizations. And the second building block, using the scientific method and hard data to innovate, right? You're trusting that the innovation, right, is guided by the right principles or concepts. Extended intelligent workflows, right? You have visibility over the entire workflow. You know what's going on. You can trust everything there. Sustainability and impact, that's all about conveying your values out to the market, letting consumers, partners, shareholders, whomever it may be, know that, yeah, like I know what their values are. I trust that who these people are. Human technology partnerships is all about driving that trust between employer and employee and technological interfaces within the organization. And then obviously the sixth one, security, right? Being able to trust that just everything that's going on, everything going in and out of the organization is safe. It's what it's supposed to be. It's not going anywhere else, right? So while this model does depend heavily on trust, it also reinforces it, definitionally from a strategic standpoint.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm getting the indication that we're pretty much at the top of the hour. So that means we're going to sort of respect the time. So I want to do two things. One is I want to thank you both for taking the time and walking us through this. It was really great to see. The other is, let me just give another reaction, and maybe to leave on this is, I had a chance to review some of, what the Institute has talked about in terms of the virtual enterprise, and seeing you present it really made it come much more to life. And I think for those of us, especially on the academic side, I think what's really interesting about this model is how it incorporates so many both important but sort of hot buttons of things like security and thinking about sustainability and thinking about quantum computing and data science. And I think, the real power for the model, and I'm sure this is how you use it, it's a way to sort of, it's a method, a disciplined method to combine your thinking at IBM on a lot of these different issues. And I'll say that since I see the thumbs up, Karen, that's a good point to leave, and I'll thank everyone for attending. And once again, thank you again, Karen and Chris, for taking time to talk to us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.